Take a look under a typical Florida home. Between heavy summer rains, high humidity, and a high water table, it becomes a dark, damp incubator. You rarely have to go down there to know there is a problem. The warning signs usually show up inside the house first: a persistent musty smell, hardwood floors cupping and buckling, or uncontrollable indoor humidity. Ignore those signs, and the trapped moisture leads directly to aggressive mold growth and structural wood rot. If you try to sell the house, a rotting subfloor is a guaranteed failure during a buyer's inspection. This puts homeowners in a difficult financial position. You are looking at a massive cost gap between your options. A basic surface cleaning runs about $2,500, while a total structural encapsulation can easily exceed $15,000. Crawlspace mold in a humid climate is a symptom of a systemic climate failure in the home's design, and treating it as a simple cleaning job is a costly mistake. This is the stack effect, which pulls air from lower levels upward. Because of this draft, up to 50% of first-floor air comes directly from the crawlspace. If the subfloor has mold, your family continuously draws those allergens right into your living areas. You might assume your standard Florida homeowners insurance will cover the remediation. In almost all cases, they won't. Policies typically exclude mold damage unless it stems from a sudden covered event like a burst pipe. Insurance companies classify mold caused by long-term humidity and rising groundwater as a routine maintenance issue. Because of these explicit exclusions, the entire financial burden of fixing the crawlspace falls squarely out of pocket on you. Making a cheap, incorrect choice now to save money will ultimately force you to pay for a second, much more expensive remediation later. You have to evaluate the real return on investment for each fix. Homeowners usually attempt two intuitive responses first. The initial instinct is to go down there and spray the wood with store-bought surface biocides. DIY chemical sprays fail because they only treat the surface symptom. They do absolutely nothing to stop the constant moisture generating the mold in the first place. Worse, a crawlspace is a confined area with incredibly poor ventilation. Going down there and disturbing an active colony puts you at severe risk of inhaling heavily concentrated mold spores. The second intuitive response seems logical. Open up the crawlspace vents to let the cross breeze dry it out. Looking at this diagram, you can see why venting fails in Florida. When you open a vent, hot, humid outside air rushes under the house, hits the cooler, air-conditioned floor joists, and instantly condenses into water droplets. By trying to air the space out, you are actively pumping fresh water directly onto the wood, guaranteeing accelerated mold growth. Applying traditional common sense to Florida's unique climate accelerates structural damage and increases your future costs. This scorecard breaks down your first professional option: basic removal. The typical upfront cost runs between $2,500 and $6,000. The process takes about 1 to 3 days. A crew will come in, safely contain the area, and successfully eradicate the physical mold from your structural wood. The immediate outcome is positive. The space is physically clean, and the acute mold threat inside your home is neutralized. But here is the critical trade-off. The environmental conditions remain entirely unchanged. The ambient humidity and the high groundwater are still exactly where they were before the crew arrived. Basic removal acts as a temporary reset button. Without changing the moisture levels, it is virtually guaranteed the mold will return. The comprehensive structural alternative is full encapsulation. This is a significant investment, requiring anywhere from $7,000 to over $15,000. The installation process is intensive. Crews lay thick vapor barriers across the ground and up the concrete walls, sealing off the foundation vents entirely, and often installing targeted drainage systems to route water away. The core mechanical benefit is isolation. This process physically cuts your home off from Florida's extreme ambient humidity and the rising water table. The long-term ROI is permanent mold prevention and an improvement in your indoor air quality upstairs. Because of the heavy labor required for the vapor barriers and potential drainage trenches, expect this project timeline to extend up to a full week. Once sealed, building codes and basic physics dictate a strict requirement. You must install a commercial-grade dehumidifier inside the encapsulated space to regulate the internal moisture. Do not attempt to cut corners by placing a standard residential dehumidifier under the house. Residential units will inevitably burn out and fail. They simply do not have the compressor strength to handle the specific air volume and the continuous heavy moisture load of a Florida subfloor. Despite the high upfront cost, encapsulation provides the only structural barrier capable of permanently lowering the crawlspace moisture baseline. To figure out which route makes sense, look at this decision tree. It maps your options directly to your primary real estate goal. If you are on a strict budget, basic professional removal is your only viable option to clear the immediate hazard. The trade-off is harsh but clear. You must accept a high risk of reinfection and physically plan for ongoing cleaning maintenance in the future. If you are selling the house immediately, full encapsulation is almost always required to close the deal. Modern real estate inspections are brutal on crawlspaces. Buyers will demand full remediation before signing, or they will simply walk away from the property. If you plan on long-term living and want to optimize your family's health and comfort, encapsulation is also the correct choice. It is the only viable path to permanently stop the stack effect from pulling contaminated air up into your living room. Whatever you decide, remember the data. Under no circumstances should you open your crawlspace vents to dry it out. In this climate, encapsulation functions as a critical engineering correction for an inherently flawed foundation design.